الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم إني أستعين متاع التذكر والتذكير النفع والانتفاع لإفادة الاستفادة حتى تمسك بكتاب الله وعلى سنة رسول الله ودعاء على الهدى أجل مرضاته وقربه والصواب لله تعالى. اللهم ها هنا بين يديك وضعفنا لا يخفى عليك تأمل لطفك جودك برحمة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He wants khair for a person, gives him understanding of his faith and his religion. And this is epitomized by the hadith of our leader, our Lord. And when we say fiqh of the deen, ya ikhwan, fiqh does not necessarily mean the rules of halal and haram, and salah and siyam and hajj and umrah and so forth, the rules of fiqh which we normally understand. But rather, yufaqihu fi din means that a person understands the reality of his place as a human and as a believer within the realm of this dunya. And that is whatever Allah subhanahu requires of him at any particular moment in time, he has an understanding of this. And an understanding of this was such that the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, when he mentioned that a person who has a certain fitra, an ability, internal, you could say natural state within him, this person, when he comes into Islam, he brings the beauty of that natural state, if it is good, into Islam, and Islam only multiplies it and beautifies it and enhances it. And this is in the words of the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, when he said, when he mentioned خياركم في الجاهلية خياركم في الإسلام إذا تفقهوا, the best of you in the days of ignorance and pre-Islam is the best of you in Islam only إذا تفقهوا, only if he understands his faith. So what does this understanding actually mean in our times, in our context of what we are going through in these moments? It means that we are in the place and in the mindset and in the understanding where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes to find us. And this mindset and this understanding that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes to find us will differ over time and place and individual, and also according to the state of the person. And how a person reaches a state in which Allah wants him to be, this can only occur when a person sits and studies and understands the real dhikr, are great gatherings, because within these short gatherings that we have, and the only short gathering of 20 minutes or thereabouts, we start to understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requires from us. And this is why some of the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the ulama, they mention this beautiful saying. They say when they mention muqamuka ina aqamak Allah, your maqam, wherever what your state is wherever Allah has placed you. Meaning whatever Allah has placed you in a situation, scenario, that is what is best for you first and foremost, and secondly, that is also how a person is expected to interact with Allah subhanahu. Finish and complete the prayer. And we understand from this when the Prophet ﷺ, when Imam Tabarani had narrated hadith marfu'an, and he has said, Man salla subh ثم جلس في مجلسه حتى تمكنت الصلاة يعني ترتفع الشمس كالرمح كان بمنزلة حجة وعمرة. So the person, and the Prophet has mentioned a person who remains after performing the Fajr prayer, and he remains sitting in that place until he completes his prayer, and he remains sitting after the prayer until the time that the sun has risen, meaning a sign time of Ishraq. And he mentioned that the time of Ishraq is approximately to when a spear length of the sun has risen over the horizon. He gets the ajr of Hajj and Umrah. And the Prophet ﷺ thereafter added the words, appears to me to be an action which is not, doesn't require the extremity of your exertion. Meaning that a person remains sitting after the Fajr prayer, the Subh prayer, until the time of sunrise, and thereafter he gets the reward of Hajj and Umrah. What is the meaning of the hadith of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam? The meaning of the hadith of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam is that a person, after completing his ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, And you can imagine Fajr is a prayer that is early in time. And after Fajr, a person normally wants to return back home either for his own worldly needs if he's going to work, or to return back to sleep if it's a very early Fajr, as is in our times. So, but this person does what? He fulfills the farad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thereafter, after fulfilling the farad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he remains. And he remains and suppresses his desires, suppresses his caprices, suppresses the inner stirring of the heart and the soul and the nafs to now, okay, we performed the farad to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, let's now return back to what we are upon our earth, on our dunya. Person suppresses that need. So he has not only fulfilled the farad, but thereafter he fulfills a need which is, or a incitement within his heart and his soul, that is even greater of than the farad, which is the nafil and the nawafil. And we know that it's through the nawafil that a person starts to gain the state of muhabba of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we know this through the hadith of Hadith al-Qudsi, a hadith that it returns back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is on the wording of the Prophet, but the inspiration of Allah Jalla ala. So the Hadith al-Qudsi of the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, it mentions, no, ما زال عبدي تقرب إلي بالنوافل حتى أحبه, that a slave continues to draw closer to me by nawafil, hatta, until the time أحبه, until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself is saying, subhanallah, we should think about these words that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after is saying that he becomes, or I start to love the person. So through the nawafil is where the door to Allah's mahabba is. And through the doors of the fara'id is through, and or the doors of the wilayah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And not that we should be mistaken to the wilayah al-amma. Every single Muslim and every single believer, when he fulfills the farad, is a wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning a wali is that person who does what? Who is imtithab awamirillah wa ijtinab nawahi. He obeys the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he abstains from the prohibitions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this person gets state of wilayah. But a state higher than wilayah is the mahbubiyah, or the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And some ulama have called it wilayah al-khassa, have called it the specific or the special friendship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what relevance does it have to the hadith that we are mentioning now? The relevance it has, ikhwan, to the hadith we are mentioning right now is that a person suppresses their needs. A certain person suppresses their inner the inner desire to now leave after the Salat al-Fajr. He remains, and thereafter till the time of sunrise. Until the time of sunrise, he thereafter performs Salah of Ishraq, and he gets the reward of Umrah and of Hajj. Both of them maqbool according to the narration we mentioned from Imam Tabarani, and raised a marfuna narration that has been mentioned by the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. So this is why the reward is tremendous, even though the action itself may sound to us to be, who takes a path through purification, through the sunnah of the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, the rewards for this will also be great and tremendous. And this is why it's been mentioned by Imam Muslim, Abu Dawud, Imam Tirmidhi, and Nasa'i, and Tabarani, and Jabir radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when he mentioned from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned about the actions of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. He said, كان النبي صلى الله عليه آله وصحبه وسلم إذا صلى الفجر جلس في مجلسه حتى تطلع الشمس حسا. Now, the Prophet ﷺ, that when he used to offer the prayer, he used to remain seating until the time that the sun. Prophet ﷺ had a period of reflection, had a period, I say, of seclusion, and had a period in which he used to withdraw from his companions every day for some moments. And that moment generally was after the Salat of Fajr. And what's been narrated from the companions and the hadith that inshallah in due time we will come across is that the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam generally used to be in a state of it builds and it inculcates within a person the reality of who they are and where we are. That we all know that we are what? Bani Bashar. And the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam has mentioned the state of this ummah, the lifetime of this ummah. عمر هذه الأمة بين 60 و70. He said the age of this ummah, and some of the narration said ajal of this ummah is between 60 and 70. So within this moment when a person sits, he starts to realize and starts to internalize his mortality. And that cannot occur except if a person spends time individually by himself. Call it muraqabah or muhasabah. A person sits for some moments in the dhikr of Allah. He says Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar. And he starts to think, Subhanallah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is free from every single blemish, every single deficiency, every single need. That ليس كمثله شيء وهو السميع البصير. He is nothing like created creation, and he is Sami' and Basir. So through this, what do we learn? We learn, ya ikhwan and akhawat, we learn that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants for us a moment to spend in i'tiqaf, a moment in which we just are between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these moments don't just occur in some parts of the day, but they occur in some parts only in a week, but rather it should be some moment in the life of every single one of us in which we are between ourselves and Allah subhanahu. Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam never left throughout his life. As soon as Nabuwah was bestowed upon him alayhi salatu wasalam, and that was the sunnah mu'akkada of i'tiqaf in Ramadan. And although the Rasul alayhi salatu never left, this was a sign and a signal to us and a teaching to us that we all need moments in which we withdraw from the world, and we have that moment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is this khalwa or uzla from the dunya causes a reality to start to form within our hearts. That is, you start to see things for how they really are. And the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam alluded to this when he said, "Ittaqu farasat al-mu'min fa innahu yanzuru bi nurillah." Fear the farasa or the foresight of a believer, for indeed he sees with the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Something is incited within the heart of a person when he spends time by himself. He spends time between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah starts to ennoble the insight of the person, the foresight of a person. And this is what occurs when a person starts to make this a habit. And what better time for us to make this a habit to sit for some moments after our salah, whether it's Fajr or whether it's Maghrib or any of the other salawat which we offer, and to spend time between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we start to make this a habit, and subhanAllah, it's been now almost, and since the non-compulsory social distancing happened, it's been almost 40 days or thereabouts. And between now and the end of Ramadan, we have now 45 days remaining approximately. Between now and Ramadan, we have 15 days remaining. And this is for us now, for these moments that we have remaining, to start to try to transform ourselves and bring in habits which will take us to Jannah and distance us from disobedience and hellfire, wa iyadhu billah min dhalik. And this is why the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam has said in a very famous hadith, and which I'm sure many of you have heard of, when the Prophet when he said, "Inna ahadakum yajma'u khalqahu fi batni ummihi 40 yawma nutfah." The hadith continues by Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masud in this hadith, and he said, "Farawa sadiq al-masduq." He mentions before the hadith. He says, the truthful and the one who is verified to be truthful by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, and he mentions, indeed, any one of us is formed is gathered within the wombs of our mothers in 40 days as a drop. And then the hadith continues, ثم يكون علقة مثل ذلك, and then it continues, ثم يكون ملغة مثل ذلك. And it continues the hadith. The ulama mentioned from this hadith istinbatan, such as, for example, Imam Salafi fi Fath al-Mu'in, he has mentioned fi Sharh al-Arba'in, he has mentioned that what occurs is that this hadith alludes to the period in which a person goes through changes over time, 40 days. We now also know that psychologists and others, they mention the habits are formed within periods of 6 weeks. Some say 4 or 6. And we know Sadiq al-Masduq, Ma yantiqu an hawa, he doesn't speak from these diseases. From his istinbat from this hadith, I've mentioned this. So we now, alhamdulillah, we're in a period of now, alhamdulillah, seclusion. And this is something that I've been in many lands of the sacred lands of Islam. You find that some of the maqams and the graves of the people of piety and some of the prophets also, you find it the most desolate and the most secluded places on the earth. And Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam, in his grave is generally believed to be in Jordan, and it's on the top of a highland, or almost a mountain, you could say, far away from civilization, far away from people. And then you also continue to other some of the companions also, they were buried in places far away from civilization. It's almost as if they reached an understanding that a person to be between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requires that a person has a degree of uzla, a degree of separation from creation. But we have that, alhamdulillah, or we should have that, alhamdulillah, 5 times a day. But a khas, the most beautiful of those times is a time after Salatul Fajr. It has been mentioned by the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. This is how we start to understand these hadith of the Rasul, of the great tremendous reward for something that appears to be an act which is not of the same extremity of striving which you would suppose would recompense such a great reward. Now, this is why the Rasul after continues and mentions some of the adhkar that we pray and the dhikr we pray after our Fajr Salah, and inshallah ta'ala that is something that we will continue with next time we are together. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tawfiq to transform ourselves in these moments, and also become ones in which we return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because these are tilqa al-ayyam natadawuluha bayna an-nas. These are just days. Things have occurred, great, glorious and tremendous events have occurred in our history. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned tilqa al-ayyam natadawuluha bayna an-nas. These are but just days that we try to pass amongst and through people. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to understand the reality of what we are passing through, and know that these are just tribulations which Allah will send, and it's for us to be that which is in the place and at the time, and with the belief of that which is required from us, and that is that we do what we have to taslim to the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but yet we do what is required from us according to the sacred law of our faith. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to understand the reality for what reality is. And this is the dua of the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, Allahumma arina haqqan al-haqqa haqqan warzuqna ittiba'ah. Allah, let me see truth, what truth is, enable me to follow it, meaning that let us see through all these. And what it has taught us, if anything, is the fact that how such an infinitesimally small living organism can bring to its knees the total dunya, from its economy, from its military, from its laws and its governance, can bring every single part to a standstill. Because Allah is Qahhar fawqa ibadih. Allah is Al-Qahhar. Allah is the one subhanahu wa ta'ala has full control over his dominion. So we ask Allah's lutuf and his ease in these times. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enter into the people of Rahmah and to make people who prepare for the coming of Ramadan as it approaches. And know that Ramadan may be slightly different from what it has been in the past. But alhamdulillah, the barakah of Ramadan continues. As we just yesterday left the barakah of the Nisfu Sha'ban, we are now soon to enter into Allah's Rahmah and the barakah of Ramadan. As the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam said, Allahumma barik lana fi Rajab wa Sha'ban wa ballighna Ramadan. Ameen, ameen, ameen. Jazakallah khair wa barakallahu feekum. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب